Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from the US by Jennifer Mulholland and Jeff Shuck. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to be here. I know that this is going to be a great conversation based on our previous conversations, and I'm sure that we are not going to have enough time to dive into everything that I want to ask you and for you to share. But before we start getting into all of that, I would love to know a little bit more, and for everyone that is listening to us, about you, your path, your journey. Who are Jennifer and Jeff?
Well, thank you so much for having us. We had such a lovely pre-conversation a few weeks ago, and we both have been so looking forward to this. So thank you for having us on. I often go first. Jeff, would you like to maybe kick us off?
No, please.
Okay. Well, I live in Park City, Utah. I have two children, ages 13 and 19. And my husband and I have lived here for almost 30 years, originally from the East Coast of the United States, but found ourselves kind of individually, and then we met out here, kind of being called to the mountains and called to nature and big sky. We are both athletes and just love what the outdoor wilderness brings in lifestyle and living. So maybe pulling back from that, and why we're in this conversation is I've been wired to raise the consciousness of people on the planet, including myself, for as long as I can remember. And I didn't articulate it that way specifically, but I did articulate it at a very young age that I wanted to make a massive positive difference in the world. And so I've always been intrinsically wired to make things better. Myself, first and foremost, just been a seeker, a striver, a becomer. And that took me, really kind of my foundation was on the athletics field and sports. I played 3 sports through high school. I played 2 Division I sports in college, lacrosse and field hockey. I've skied my whole life. And just athletics kind of was in my DNA and in my blood. And it's there that I really learned how to become a leader and how to work with others as a team. It's also where I fell in love with strategy and how do you move the ball up the field and into the goal? Like, what is the fastest path to get that to happen and the most enjoyable and fun? So I have that kind of foundation of human performance from a physical standpoint, athletic standpoint, but that was complemented by an introduction into, I would say, mental performance, spiritual performance at a really young age when my mother and grandmother kind of passed down their lineage of light, I would call it. My grandmother was a 3rd-degree Reiki healer. And so when I had a headache, she would lay her hands on me and I wouldn't take any medication. And through energy work, my headache would go away. And so I was fascinated by metaphysics and healing and different types of energy medicine, and found myself getting trained through several decades on how to do that and how to be a channel for positive energy to come through. That combined with my kind of appetite to lead in the professional setting. And I have been a kind of a serial entrepreneur. I've started several different businesses. One started in the nonprofit space, teaching leadership and teamwork to women through the sport of lacrosse, bringing that sport to the state. And that led me into technology, which is where Jeff and I met 25 plus 30 years ago, really in the tech.com days, if you will, really trying to bring universities and colleges online worldwide, which I can say we had a big hand in doing. So I had a real appetite for leadership then that was leading a consulting company or the consulting organization and leading up innovation in that 10-year stint of climbing the corporate ladder, which I eventually left and created my own businesses. So I think it's the shortest way I can explain it, that my path has taken, this blend like many of your listeners, that it wasn't a linear road. But I can honestly say that like those places that I lit up, I'm incorporating and have incorporated to hopefully really bring light into the world and to bring goodness into the planet and to help people become more aware and awake and aligned to who they truly are so they can really make a difference in whatever field they're in. So there's a lot more to say, but I am so grateful. I feel blessed to be able to live where I live and really grateful to be able to do this work that Jeff and I get to do together every day.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And before we continue, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us, and thanks for the question. I will say again, my name is Jeff Shuck. I live in a town called Michigan City, Indiana, which your listeners may know where Chicago is. I live about an hour outside of Chicago. It was an auspicious day here because we're in the path of the eclipse. There was an eclipse in North America today and got to see about 95% of it. So that was neat. So that's where I am in the world. And it's interesting. I would tell you, we're doing a lot of podcasts for the book right now. And we keep getting asked this question. And I find that every time it's a little bit harder to answer because I'm getting more thoughtful about it. What feels present to me is I would share that I'm going through a transition with my family in that I have 4 kids, and 3 of them are in college or about to go to college. So because of that, we're moving. We're packing up a home that we've been in for 15 years. If anybody's watching this video, you can see a bunch of bare walls. It's why it sounds like I'm in an echo chamber, because I'm in a really empty room. And it's an interesting process because you get to a certain point in your life and you're old enough that you've accumulated all this stuff, and some of it's things and some of it's experiences and emotions and thoughts. And so I've been very consciously deconstructing all of that the last couple weeks of literally sifting through things and deciding what I want to take with me, and also just processing memories. And so I bring that up to say it's been really touching to see the things that I saved, the things that are in boxes and packed away. And most of them I'm not going to take with me into wherever I go next, but I connect with the old me, the younger me who wanted to save these things. And it's usually letters and it's pictures. And a lot of the letters have similar themes, I guess is why I'm sharing this story. A lot of letters from people I knew in my teens and 20s thanking me for wisdom and thanking me for listening and thanking me for how I helped them heal. And I don't feel like I was very wise in my 20s, but I think that's been a common theme in my life, and one of those things that you can't really recognize until you look backwards. Like Jen was saying, we live these windy paths, and then we can look back when we get high enough off the ground and say, okay, there was a through line there. And I think a consistent theme for me has been wanting to help people very personally, wanting to help people see that they matter, wanting people to know that they have a right to be here, And that led me to work in a nonprofit. That led me to leading a team and doing very, very personal mentoring with college students at the time. And then that led me into fundraising and philanthropy when my mother died of cancer, and really wanting to try to make a bigger difference, help mobilize people to make a bigger difference collectively together. But I think a theme really for me has been, one is just wanting people to know that they matter and that they can make a difference in their own lives. And I think two, being enough of a pioneer and a rebel that I never was really interested in working for anyone. I was a terrible employee, so that kind of leads you to doing your own thing. And I've always been, I think things that scared my friends never really scared me. I don't know if I had self-confidence or I was just totally ignorant and arrogant. But so those two things together have kind of always had me on a path of working for myself or owning my own companies, or having ventures that are designed to maybe think a little bit differently. So I think my bio says I'm a wonder and a wanderer, and I feel like the older I get, the more that fits, and I'm proud of that tradition. So that luckily has led me to working with Jen and doing the work that has us here today.
Thank you for sharing. It's always so interesting, how we connect with our own story. I know this a lot of times whenever I'm interviewed somewhere and they ask me to share about me, I always share something slightly different. Like there is something, it's like, well, there's been a long life and there's so much of me and my experiences that I cannot fit all of it. And sometimes I share one aspect or another aspect, and it's really always so interesting. Before we continue, would you be able to share a little bit about how Plenty came together? How did you decide to do this, and what it is that you're trying to bring into the world?
Sure. Before I answer that, I just want to highlight what you just said, and the ability to be aware and present, to see ourselves anew, to invent ourselves. We have the chance to invent ourselves every day, and to be intentional about what we want to take with us, and be gentle with ourselves about the story we tell. So I just love what you're pointing to about the idea that I can see myself in a different way, and I don't have to memorize these 3 or 4 lines that maybe I use all the time when I introduce myself. I love that. I love that you just said that, particularly today. Yeah, very briefly, maybe I'll tee it up and let Jen run with it. Plenty, we say we help conscious leaders grow. It's helping people find out for themselves what matters to them. And we do it whether the people are independent or going through a personal transformation in their life, or they're working in a company and a team. And we do a lot of work with teams and organizations to help them figure out how they want to grow. But we've been in business for about 10 years together and have had the privilege of working with thousands and thousands of individuals and companies. And that work has been the foundation of our new book, Leading with Light, which talks about some of the practices that we use and the things that we have learned and share. So maybe I'll stop there and see, Jen, how you would pick up that question.
Yeah, I mean, we really believe in a world of plenty for everyone. And that kind of has three points of reference. The first being the idea that there's enough to go around, that we're not competing with each other, we're competing with a mindset, and that mindset is scarcity. And so, what would that look like if that wasn't true? If there was more than enough to go around for everyone? Jeff likes to talk about as it's usually an issue of distribution um, rather than true access. And so that kind of sets the frame of our mindset. The second idea is that there is enough, meaning we're so, including ourselves, have been wired to like have more, be more, do more, right? But this idea that, well, what if I could bring gratitude and really see what I have right now. And the more I can bring my presence to the presence, the gifts that are right here, then I make room for more to usher in. So it's that universal law that where if I'm grateful for what I already have, I'm given more to be grateful for. And the third is really the crux of our work, the ethos and the belief that you are enough. You listening are enough right now. We are enough right now. I am enough. I am whole. I have everything I need to be. And it's kind of re-engineering the script that we've been fed, whether that's in a certain culture or family passed down or an unconscious pickup or trauma that we've just somehow fallen into the trap that we're not enough. So we have to look different, be different, have different things in order to fit in and belong.
Mm.
Well, we really rest in this experience of our own journey of becoming enough. And it's a practice, it's not an overnight insight. But that's really the foundation of our work with organizations and teams. And we go through the door of humans, of people. It's human work. Every organization, every company, every nonprofit is made up of people, and people want the same things. We want to feel safe. We want to feel seen. We want to be supported. We want to have freedom to be ourselves and to offer our gifts into the world. And we want to have the experience of clarity to know what those gifts even are, right?
Mm.
And so what lights us up is creating sacred spaces and really intimate conversations, dropping into the real stuff to help people remember that they're enough, that they have the wisdom within, that they are the leader they're seeking to be. And we get to practice all of that right along with everyone we attract and everyone we serve.
Mm. That's beautiful. There's some of the things that you're saying that I notice so much in my own journey and in my own work as well. The understanding that every time it's in a conversation with clients, or whether that's with people or with organizations or businesses, it all comes down to that connection, like from a human perspective, and an understanding on where are we in our spiral of awareness, to
Mhm.
understand what we are, how we are, and how we've been wired, and how can we I use the phrase a lot of times, rewrite our own story, to change that perspective of living in whatever we are now, to an understanding of the potential, or another perspective that there is plenty, we are enough, and there is enough. And how would that change how we operate in society, and then how teams operate, or how people in their dynamics at home with their friends and everything, it changes, because the more that we can incorporate that, the more beautiful life is. And I think that as you shared, and as I know more of what you do as well, is like it's a lot of times an unlearning, and it's a process that needs to happen with connection. And I love, Jen, that you just mentioned the word safe, because a lot of times I feel like that's one of the things that people don't feel safe, and it doesn't matter really why. It's like, we all have our own conditioning and our own traumas
Mhm.
that we've been through. But if we don't feel safe, then how do we operate? And when we are able to feel safe, then it changes our perspective, and then we're able to explore more. So I would love to know, as you shared that, like, how do you go about creating those safe
Mm.
space, or those sacred spaces?
I love the question is just fantastic, and I love what both of you have just said. I think, I mean, I have so many thoughts. Let me put something out there, and hopefully it makes some sense, but that connects what you're asking and what Jen was sharing. I think I want to be careful how I say this, because I don't mean to imply that there aren't situations that are unsafe, dangerous, threatening for people. I do think a lot of our work starts with, whether we call it inside out, Jen calls it inside out, or whether we say we start with ourselves, or I like the word agency. We start by tapping ourselves on the head, and you can imagine, here's just a what if. I'm not saying this is true, but what if safety were a choice? What if we started with a decision that we would decide to be safe? Doesn't make the world any different, but to say that I'm okay with who I am, I'm okay with the thoughts that I have, that when I'm fearful or insecure or embarrassed or prideful, I'm still going to create safety for myself. And I think a big part of what we do is encouraging people to be curious about their own role in creating what they see around them. It's like, imagine you're in a dark room, and it seems so cold, and you can't see anything, and you're bumping around, and there's a big echo, and you say to yourself, this just must be like stone and concrete. Like, oh, that must be water dripping. The room is so closed off. I hate this room, you say to yourself. I feel threatened in here. And then you kind of ease yourself to the wall, and you find something, and you realize it's a drapery, and you pull it back, and the sun comes in, right? And all of a sudden we see like this world that was so closed off. It's just a choice to have perspective. Jen and I were just talking again today about something I think, Brian, we mentioned to you a few weeks ago when we met you about, going to look at the eclipse and everyone's staring at their phone. Or, you take off on an airplane and you're flying in the sky, and what's everyone do? Shut the blinds, right? So I think part of our work is encouraging people to tap themselves on the head. We say, like, choose yourself, raise your own hand and say, okay, well, what if I started here? And part of what we say at Plenty, Jen talked about the three meanings of plenty. We often say that we're not competing with each other. We're competing with the idea that there isn't enough to go around. We're competing with this idea of scarcity. Well, scarcity has parents, and the parents of scarcity are cynicism, pessimism, skepticism, right? Just the idea that you have to be afraid, the idea that the world is getting darker than it's ever been, the idea that there's no way out, the idea that you have to be afraid of people you don't know. Like, all of these ideas are peddled to you by people who want you to live in fear. And so if we want something different, we have to start by saying, okay, well, my scarcity comes from these false trade-offs that I'm asked to make. I can enjoy technology, but that doesn't mean that I choose out of nature. I can believe in science, but that doesn't mean that I choose to not see the God all around me. And so I think part of it, let me stop here and let Jen get a word in, but I think part of it is helping people see the power of their own perspective, and not just in kind of a positive psychology way, but in really seeing, like, I can open the blinds of my own existence. And when I open the blinds, I see that the things I'm scared of are just things that I don't know. And when I'm willing to see things I don't know, I can create room for spirit, for nature, for God to work in my life. And I can see that then I'm part of that. So I don't know that, Jen, when we're doing this work, it like starts at this metaphysical level. I think there's something probably much more practical, but I'm inspired, Brian, by what you're saying and what you're asking. And I think that's part of the ethos that we try to get at with people.
It's such a lovely question, and it's so deep. I think I'd add some flavor to it, that we aspire to model how people can create their own safety. That there is work we do to create a sacred space. We have a retreat center here in beautiful Park City, Utah, called Heart Space. And we were really intentional about how we built it out and what we do to prepare it each time guests come in. So there's a vibe there's a comfort, there's a aesthetic. It's beautiful. You walk in, your stress melts away. So there's a physical environmental participation that absolutely creates safety. And it can be created in any room, anywhere over the world with intentionality. That said, I think a lot of our work is at the human embodiment that Jeff's talking about, that we have responsibility to curate, to experiment with. And when I talk about like, well, how do you create your own safety? Well, one of the ways you do that is practicing presence,
Mm.
is really allowing your to be here, hijacked by your, not be distracted. And if you are that, okay, but you can tap you, that's even going to occur to you, just not going to know how. And so part of creating space when we are fully attention moment, we're able to see, sense, feel, hear, know more.
Mm.
And when we are able to do that, then we're able to be more conscious in the action we take forward. And it's coming from us. No one's telling us how to act or how to be safe. We're not asking others to create safe environments for us. We are co-creating that. We're stepping into that capability we all have
Mm.
by mere of being alive, by breathing, by being incarnated in this moment, whatever age you are. And so I love the question, because the more present we can become within skin, within our vibe, within our essence, to really knowing thyself, really activating the fullness of who we are, we get to then provide that safety and model that safety for others, that it's okay to do so.
Mm.
Because I think often the consciousness scale, for what it's worth, since we're on the conscious action podcast, oftentimes we're skimming the surface. We're not really dropping into the core pinpoint hub of our potential. And our potential only gets activated when we drop in. It doesn't work on a surface skim level. Like any athlete who is the best at their game has dropped in with deep practice of every muscle, mental, emotional, physical, to train an alignment of being in whatever they're facing, you know?
Mm.
And so that you can call that safety, you can call that aliveness, you can call that potential. But I really feel like that is the game changer of those people that are willing. And it's scary to drop in to your full self and soul, right? And oftentimes we don't even know what that feels like or looks like, and that's okay. But being curious about, wow, what could that safety look like? What could my sense of being be like if I'm fully present, and then offer that presence to others? Because one last point is that when we are doing that for ourselves, we're better listeners. We are better weavers. We are better leaders. And we're able to offer that sense of safety to others in service of humanity. But first, we do it with ourselves. And sometimes it doesn't look like that. Sometimes we're really good at doing it for others and we suck at doing it for ourselves, which I would say is 90% of us, and that's the unlearning, right? Or relearning and remembering. But that is the exchange of this gift we get to use in the human walk, is like practicing that. If we want to create safer environments for others, we have to start with ourselves.
And can I just make I love where you just went with that, Jen and Brian, like thinking about conscious action. I think that's that's the bridge. I don't know, always in our work, we're plenty is mostly focused on feeling plenty of yourself so we can spread that in the world. But I like that, Brian, you've specifically talked about conscious action. And I think from what we see, the longer, let me say it this way, the longer we do our work, the more I believe in the inherent worth of every single person on the planet. Not just the people who agree with me, or just the people who do things I like, or just the people who look like me. And rising above the epidemic of positionality that's happening in the world, where, you know, I'm the us, so you must be the them. When you really start to create that safety that Jen's talking about, I love, Jen, how you said it creates safety for others. You start to see, oh, this is what conscious action is. It's not thinking that, oh, some people don't get it. It's deep down, everybody gets it if they are given a chance to slow down and connect with it. Even the people who do the most horrific things, I must believe there's an inherent good in them, and they just haven't been exposed to it yet.
Yeah.
And so how can I help them slow down, wake up, see who they are, instead of telling them that they're bad, punishing them for what they're doing, shouting louder than they are. And I think it's interesting because you do this work long enough. I think, Jen, you would really passionately agree with this. You end up becoming more positive about the future of the world, but you see how it has to start personally. You see how it has to start with each person. And, you know, it's great to have a United Nations, and it's great to have all these governments. That's not going to change it for us. What's going to change it is conversations and space for people to have those conversations for themselves. So it's an interesting, this work we do, and I'd love, Brian, what your experience is with the work, that you end up getting more positive about the future of humankind, but you realize it's one person at a time, right? It's one soul at a time, and that's how we create the conscious action.
Yeah, I think in what I hear both of you sharing that I connect with a lot is one is the power of presence. That is huge. And like our presence as an antidote for so many of the things that are not working. I usually tell my students at university, presence is the antidote for stress when we are talking about stress. Because if I am present and I am able to drop in, and yes, as we are talking, we need that safety because mostly that's not where we are operating or where most of us grew up with, then we can actually be present and we can drop into our power. And and as you're also sharing, I love that, like, I do believe that we are all inherently beautiful, kind, compassionate human beings with conditioning, with trauma, with within a system of individualization and othering, and it's like protecting what I have, and therefore my actions, if I'm operating from that space, might be detrimental for others. And when I know that for myself, when I started to connect more with there's no separation, then it's been easier to hold everyone with love and compassion, even those that think radically differently than me, because that's their beliefs and it's beautiful as well. And how can we hold all of that? And the other thing that, and I'd love to explore this with both of you now, is understanding what you were saying before, Shane, about like, we need to do that work with us as well. Like we are doing this with others, but we need to model as well how that looks like, the being a leader for ourselves, taking, as you were saying, Chef, before, like taking agency, taking responsibility, taking ownership of our own experience. And sometimes it's easier for others to point it for us. And sometimes it's easier for us to see it in others. But the moment that we're able to take that responsibility and lead our own lives, be the leader of our own lives, then we can also show up for others, whether we are actively doing the work that we are doing, or if it's just by being ourselves and being present and being able to be more of a conscious being, we become conscious leaders. So I would love to throw it to you in terms of this piece of conscious leadership, but as well like how it starts from ourselves.
Lovely. Well, one thought that I just want to make a comment before I maybe tee up that segment that you just shared about your own ability to see, have compassion for others. I, it's such a practice and it's such a noble commitment to do that. I would
Yeah.
imagine for you as it is for us, there's some days that's easier to do than others, or some conversations much smoother than others,
Yeah.
right? But the commitment to that, I feel like is a big part of the practice. And one of the exercises we have in our book is the idea when you are in a conversation or you're in a confrontation or you're across the table with somebody who has such extreme different views than you, like look beyond the content of at which you're disagreeing or needing to agree and just simply look for their light. Look for their light. And sometimes it's easier to see in others and sometimes it's harder, but that's the practice of doing that in ourselves. And sometimes seeing the light in ourselves is the hardest person to see it in. It's much easier to
Mhm.
see it in our kids, in our business partners, in our spouses, in our parents. And maybe it's not. Maybe they bug the hell out of you, right? And it's just like much harder. But it is the practice of like we get to make a choice about looking for the light or not? Or are we really, anchoring around the shadow and the darkness and the triggers? And that kind of leads into your question, I think, about conscious leadership. And so what is that and how do we practice that for ourselves? How do we model the way? One of the ways we describe, or the way we describe conscious leadership is the ability to be aware, aligned, and intentional. And we describe those in different ways. So awareness is this idea of when you are fully activated in your presence, when you are fully here and you are practicing being in the moment, you're able to be aware of sensations your body's giving you in that moment to tell you whether this experience is feeling good or not, right? Whether you feel open and safe and expanded, whether you feel contracted and closed or irritated. Like those are cues of awareness that are activated and come from you being present and come from your presence. They also happen outside of you. So noticing signs and signals and synchronicities and maybe hearing a word that somebody used that you'd never heard in that way. And it was just the word that you were kind of that opened up an insight for you. Or you're thinking of somebody and they call the next day. Those things that you couldn't possibly have orchestrated. Awareness brings them to your consciousness. And then alignment is this idea of, okay, so when these cues are coming into me, are they in alignment with my light or are they out of alignment? So, meaning our body, as that example of like expansion, contraction, usually when we are in alignment with our passions, our strengths, our purpose, if something comes in or we're getting a signal that is expansive, it's usually saying like we are in alignment to the flow, to the light that we are, to the opportunities that are here. When we are getting signals of roadblocks, of delays, of tension, stress, headaches, sickness, dis-ease, those are all signals that says something is out of alignment. Your back goes out. Like that's why people go to chiropractors, right? To get back into alignment. So it's being aware leads us to becoming more aligned with the full expression, the full light that we are. And then when we are able to have better understanding for ourselves of how life works for us and these awareness signals, whether we're aligned or not, we get to choose how and where we show up. That's the action part. We get to make intentions. We get to choose to take the next step. We get to decide whether we're going to go for an opportunity or say no to it, whether we're going to pick up the phone when the friend calls or not. Like, we are going to set the stage for how we want to be as we lead and live our lives as human beings. So that's kind of the tee up for not only how we define what conscious leadership is, being aware, aligned, and intentional with your light, but modeling the way for us has then, like, I mean, we've got pages, our books out now, and man, talk about the grand invitation to practice even more than you could possibly imagine now that we wrote the book, right? We've already been practicing for decades, but now the depthness of really fine tuning and dropping into those for ourselves is a daily practice. And some days are awesome and expansive and so filled with possibility, like today with the solar eclipse, and other days are shitty and hard. And you wake up and you're like, what happened last night? I just woke up in the worst mood and screw practicing all this stuff, So that's I think the journey is just deepening the commitment and the level of practice to becoming more aware, aligned, and intentional.
And I'd love to, Brian, if I may, I want to take it back to agency for a second, because we talk a lot about it in our work and definitely in the book. And, I want to talk to people out there who are trying to make a difference in their lives and feel overwhelmed, like Jen is saying. A big message about this awareness, alignment, and intention is you don't do it all your own. You don't have to do it, and you actually don't do it all on your own. And we talk about the idea of agency, but also understanding spirit or God or nature, or however you conceive the divine. And with the metaphor that we use is the river, imagining you're going down the river in a raft or a canoe or a stand-up paddleboard. You have a paddle. That's your agency, right? You have to use that at times, especially when there's no current. You won't go anywhere. You'll just drift. But there is a massive flow to the river. That is the universe. And I think often we'll work with people who really want to change in their lives, and they're paddling so hard, right? And they're getting so tired out. And we'll just point to, like, hey, maybe if we heighten our awareness of where the flow is in the river, we can align with that. And, so many people we work with, especially successful people or achieving people, have actually gotten good at paddling against the current and talking themselves into work and grinding it out and persevering. And often we say, like, well, what if you turned the canoe around and you paddled in the direction of the current? You don't have to paddle as much, and you don't have to paddle as hard. So a lot of the book, after we talk about awareness and alignment and intention, is help around figuring out how the universe is working too. And I think often we see, like, people have chosen one belief or the other, and one belief is kind of the secret. And if I just wish it, everything will happen for me. Well, I don't know if the universe works that way. But the other belief is I have to do it all myself. And I know the universe doesn't work that way. So it's sometimes the best action is slowing down. Sometimes the current is so strong we can't do anything. Jen will tell you this morning, there's so much change and transition and sorrow and grief in my life right now. I can't outforce the current if I wanted to. I feel like I have to, like, pick up my feet and let the river take me and be okay with being turned about and getting wet and getting cold and just saying, like, okay, God, like, I trust you. I believe you. I don't even have opportunity to put my paddle in. But then things calm down, then I might need to paddle here and there. And when things are really calm, wow, you can't just wait for the river to take you if it's not moving at all. So I think a big part of our work, and certainly a big part of the book, is helping people see like there's a rhythm in my life, and we believe it's benevolent. It's working on your behalf, but we've gotten so good at denying it, ignoring it, you know, papering over it, that if we can slow down and see it, you know, we can see that there's an architecture, that we belong, that we're part of it, that we're part of the grand design. And instead of trying so hard to work, we could just fit into that rhythm. We find that we have a part in the song. So I just I want to add to what Jen is saying and what you bring it back to the agency. It's not only about agency, right? There's a surrender, there's a humility, and there's also a belonging of knowing that we're part of something that's bigger than us, and that our part matters.
Mm, yeah, I love that. I love, from the things that you're both sharing, like some of the really interesting things for me is, and this has been a huge part of my path, was learning how to slow down, to be able to be present, to be able to notice, as you were saying, Jen, before, like that awareness, both internally and externally, because that is a lot of times how I've been able to actually understand more how to be, how to choose, that having that intention that you were saying, how to be more in alignment, and at the same time, unlearning, trusting, as you just said, Jeff, like the word surrender. I love the word surrender. It's just allowing as well the flow to guide me, and understanding how to notice my beliefs and how to unlearn them so that I can fully allow myself to flow. And I think that, if I hear what you're sharing correctly with that intention as well, I can help direct within the flow, of that river. I can also support in guiding it a little bit, but I'm using the flow of life to allow myself to navigate what it is that, I don't need to grind so much. I need to hustle. I can actually enjoy life because there's this life force that is guiding, and I'm co-creating, and we are all co-creating that. And how do we do that? A lot of times is requiring to practice, so that then we're able to, as you were saying, Jen, like not every day is going to be a beautiful seemingly day, or not every conversation is going to be nice, and there's going to be a lot of different things. How can I learn how to navigate those moments that are perhaps challenging, uncomfortable, and to use them just as the beautiful light days as well?
Love that. Yeah. And there's no instructions. There's no one who's got it right for you, like that nuance of how we walk our path and how we make the decisions and what feels good and what doesn't. Like it's changing all the time, but
Mhm.
awareness helps to notice what works for us and what doesn't. And as we get older, I think we just get a little bit less tolerant to spend time on the things that don't work for us any longer. We kind of outgrow that, outgrow those clothes. But I love, I love the point because we fundamentally believe, and it's how I navigate my life is following flow. It's a company value. And like, could it be that easy?
Hmm.
Like, who said you had to work freaking hard to achieve what you want to achieve? Like, we're not saying you don't act and don't do the work, but I don't know if I was given a choice to have it be a freaking climb and pushing a boulder up and working in like surviving the rapids versus being taken down on the river with a nice, like, whatever in my hand, like, I'd choose the latter. Right. And, that flow and flowing life, like, why does it have to be hard? Is that a false construct that we've been fed and bought into? And what I love is that we are wired to hold both spaces at the same time. I have fallen in love with hot yoga sculpt. So it's a high intensity workout in a 95-degree room. I'm sweating my ass off. I'm lifting weights. I'm doing cardio. And I've gotten really strong. And it has activated my athlete part of myself that I've missed for a while. And the other day, I'm so always so blown away at each class. Like, actually, something new comes along that I can do differently. I just find my own evolution of strength surprising me. And yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days ago, I was doing like a really strong plank hold. And then I was moving my feet, like sprinting. In this motion, and it was like kicking my butt, and I was working so hard, and in that moment an insight dropped into my mind that absolutely shifted my whole experience of this idea of flow, of allowing, of like, of really, what if the state I have been striving to become my whole life, to be better, to experience the fifth dimension in human form, to be an enlightened being. What if that was here right now with just a simple choice, just a different breath? This download happened in my hard work. I was not like meditating. I wasn't sitting still. I was kicking my own ass, like working so hard. And out of the blue, this new insight came that we write about the idea in our book, but man, did it drop into my cellular vibration of knowing that, wow, I get to just choose to be there. And I can do the quantum leap right now. No, I don't have to wait. I don't have to work any harder. I don't have to do more, create more to be more. And this may sound crazy, but like for me, it was so surprising that it deepened what we were talking about. And it was an insight that changed the way I viewed everything in that moment, viscerally, in action. I was moving. I wasn't sitting still. And I think that's the breadth and beauty of life. It's vital. It's alive. It's moving. I can be as still as I want. And guess what's still moving? My blood, my heartbeat, my breath. Like, I can literally try to be still, but it's all moving without me doing anything. Right. And so I think that's this invitation of being in conscious action, is we are taking action. We are human beings. We are made to create. We're made to walk and run. We're made to breathe and do. And we're also made to tap into this force field of infinite potential that wants to use us to manifest a new way, a new world, a new becoming.
You said something earlier, Brian, that I think threads together your comments and Jen's for me that I just want to underline for people, which is the word unlearn. And I think that's just such a profound way to say it. You know, one thing to take away from the story that Jen just shared is she wanted this new insight about spirit, and her way to get it wasn't to sit down and make a list, right? To go and think about it and to take a class about it, right? And to really put a lot of time to it. She actually said the opposite. I was working out, I was doing something different, I was moving my body, and all of a sudden this insight found me, you know? And one of the kind of metaphors that we use in Lantern is, imagine that you're lost in the woods at night, right? You have no idea where you are and the woods are really thick. The last thing you would do is pick a random direction and start running at full speed. You wouldn't immediately try to fix being lost. And yet often in our lives, when we feel stuck or we feel alone or we feel frustrated or we feel lost, we just immediately want to work on it. And often that's the worst thing to do. A part of why Lantern, our leadership retreat, is so wonderful is we'll quiet people down. We'll put them in conversations. We'll give them a different topic. We'll get outside. We'll go into nature. So that unlearning, the unlearning the things that got you stuck is one of the ways we get unstuck, distracting that mind. This entire podcast, I have two small dogs who are adorable and I love them, but almost the entire podcast, they've been barking nonstop. I hope it's not coming out on the recording. They have been barking. You know what they've been barking at?
We can hear them.
Some person in the street or some other dog who they think is going to threaten them and destroy them or hurt us or hurt me. And it's totally a figment, right? There's no one outside that's going to hurt them or hurt me. Well, we're all like that. We have dogs barking all the time, telling us, be afraid, be stressed, be worried. I don't know. I think you should be afraid. I really do. And unlearning that. We don't need to feed the dogs. We don't need to shout at them. We don't need to go check the window. It's all okay. And what you learn is like the dogs will end up taking a nap and settling down. And so I just love that idea of the unlearning. And the unlearning isn't always a forced process, right? One of our favorite thinkers is a gentleman named D. Hock who says, clear a space in your mind and new ideas will fill it. It's not about more. It's not about learning more, studying more. About finding space, finding that presence. Unlearn a few things and you'll be amazed at the wisdom you already have inside of you.
Yeah, and as Jen, you were sharing that story of your insights during that class as well. I do think that yes, it might not have been the space that one would perhaps think of having an insight in that moment, yet you've been leading up to that with your practice, with your presence, with your awareness, with your alignment, with your intention, as you were sharing before. And we you created an opening there. Perhaps not, it wasn't super like, okay, I'm going to go to this class and I'm going to have this insight. But there's a preparation. I think that for me, as you know, the more that I am connected and tapped into the life force or the universe or however we want to call it, it is easier to be able to receive, even in the moments that I'm not actively trying to do so, because
Yes.
there's a practice, there's a process, there's a preparation there that I am allowing myself to live more within that space or that frequency, that things and insights and those synchronicities that you mentioned as well before, that I can notice them. Because one of the things that I remember when I was a teenager, I went to one of my spiritual teachers and I told her, like, you won't believe what happened. It was so synchronistic. It's something that happened. And she's like, amazing. And what also if everything that is happening is synchronistic and you just don't notice it? And I was like, whoa, this is so like, again, this unlearning or this opening or insights. And I think that, of course, might not happen all of the time, but there is something that we can consciously do every single day to practice, to be present, and to drop in, so that we are able to be within that space. And I know, like,
Yeah.
I'm also looking at the time. I'm like, oh my God, where has the time gone for this conversation? And I do want to honor your time, so we might need to do a part two on this talk. But
Yeah.
yeah, like,
May I make one comment about that? I think you
yes.
just illustrate the beautiful idea of this occupying both spaces, that yes, action, again, like we have a physical form. We are incarnated in third dimension to create. We are creators, co-creators. And so that action is part of our DNA. It's part of our makeup. It's part of what we're here to do. And that idea that insight can happen at any time, because we are always connected. We are always tuned in, tapped in, whether we are aware of it or not. And holding both spaces that, oh, wow, well, I actually don't have to do anything for an insight to come. No, you don't, because you're totally tuned in right now. You don't have to go to a yoga class or climb a mountain or do whatever you do to access that opening. We all are plugged in from the nature of us being born. We are part of the oneness of creation. We don't disconnect. We are always connected. That said, as we practice more intentionally conscious action, conscious leadership, we get to play with the experiences of what wants to download and come in, the frequency, the feeling of being in awe. Even like, I can't tell you how many years, lifetimes I've been on the synchronicity path. And when they happen, I'm still like a kid in a candy shop getting my first lollipop. I'm overtaken by awe of, wow, how did that just happen? So I think that the ability to be in this naive, open, fresh, virgin space of like of the unlearn, like unlearning that programming, that it's a blank canvas, and also practicing intentionally who we want to become, and seeing what the blend of that recipe provides us. But you don't have to work on it. You don't have to like create the environment or, you know, do a set of exercises, in my opinion, to be able to necessarily have access to those. Are available because we are completely plugged in to the well of well-being, or you know, divine light, the hand, higher source, whatever you name that to be, and it makes us all up.
I do think, I know you're trying to end this, Brian, and we'd love to come back. I just want, what I hear from both of you, how I might say it is, I think we learn to be disconnected. And Jen, you said, I think this is what you meant. We are born connected, but we often learn to disconnect.
Completely.
And our
Yeah.
windshield is born perfectly clean, and then we go through a life that dirties it up. So the unlearning is about cleaning off that windshield so you can see again what you already have. And one thing I think we're very, let's say proud, that's not the right word, but we're proud of in the book, we don't say we have the wisdom. The book is about showing you that you have the wisdom. Everybody who's listening to this, be your own oracle, be your own teacher. You can be your own guide. And I think that's what's been so rewarding about our practice and the people we get to practice with, is we're all helping each other trying to find what was true and original, like the original authentic light in here. You know, we're very proud in that the book is pointing you there, and it's saying like, look at yourself, not that we know it, we know that you know it. And that's a gift we want to give to everybody, right? So it's just delightful. Your questions are wonderful, and in your curiosity and your attentiveness, it's really wonderful to be in your care, Brian. Thank you for having us here.
Oh, thank you. You know, as I said, like I could talk to you for hours, and like, and I think there's something in here that I find it a lot of times fascinating in my own experiences, being able to hold these multiple perspectives of reality at one time, because there are multiple realities at one time, and these different perspectives, and how to hold that. You know, it's like, yes, I have the answers, and also I can learn from others. Yes, I don't have to do anything, and I can do some things.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know. I don't need to go to, as you were saying before, Jen, I don't need to go to the top of the mountain to feel connected, because I'm connected here. yet I can go there as well and be connected.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's not one or the other. It is about understanding. And I practice a lot of Tibetan Buddhism, and a lot of times in the Buddhist teachings, it is about understanding we are ready Buddhas. We are already enlightened beings, and we just need to get the veils out of there, as you were just sharing, Chef, cleaning the windshield. We just need to realize that that's who we are. And at the same time, we might need someone to tell us that, what you were sharing
Yeah.
at the beginning in terms of plenty, like there is plenty, you are enough, there is enough. If we haven't heard that, we might not even know that that's a possibility. And when someone points that out, then that can also create an opening. So it's this beautiful dance a lot of times of these things that, like we can do, we can be, we can trust ourselves, we can trust others, we can trust the universe, and how each of us create that uniquely. That's, our own unique path to living more consciously, to be more connected. It's always so, so beautiful. And again, I want to honor our times. Uh,
That's lovely.
if any last message or anything that
Mm.
you'd like to share for everybody listening, the space is open for that.
As you were saying, or as you were sharing again, just thank you so much. We look forward to being in lots more conversations together. It's just been delightful. I had a series of synchronicities that happened on Sunday. Um, and the image I will just describe. So I had three experiences of the same metaphor hit me three different ways. One was in Instagram. One was my cousin calling, who I haven't spoken to in probably, I don't know, 15 years. And the other was a picture I found, and it was all of the same image. And the image is this: it's an egg. And if you think about an egg, if an egg is cracked from the outside in, life dies. But if the egg cracks from the inside out, life emerges.
Hmm.
And so imagining the light within you is begging to be released, to come forth, to be known, to shine so brightly in the world,
Hmm.
to be seen, to be felt. And only you can give yourself permission to shine from the inside out. And when you do, whatever that looks like, you will be giving yourself the grandest invitation to a new life, to a new becoming that's sustainable, that is mysterious, that has longevity, that has life force and vitality. And I can't make it up to tell you that that image literally on Instagram, then my cousin, who I haven't talked to in 15 years, we're talking about this. She brought it up, the egg. I'm like, what? I just saw this, right? And then I saw a picture in a magazine that it just felt like what a beautiful invitation for us all to shine from the inside out, whatever that looks like to you, to know your light, to love your light, to be your light, is what I'd
I
conclude with
love that.
for today.
That's hard to follow. What I would add is I'll give the other part of plenty. I think Jen just gave you one side of plenty. The other part of plenty, I would leave people with the idea that you matter. Whoever you are listening, you matter, you belong, you have a right to be here. You can take up space. We need you. And I mean it in the way of wanting people to be validated and seen, but also in the way of saying, you matter. We can't do it without you. We can't do it if you choose to stay in the dark room. We can't do it without you if you choose to stay asleep or to close the blind. We need you. You matter. You matter to yourself, but you matter to the rest of us. And for the world we all imagine being a part of, it takes everybody to wake up, and only you can wake yourself up. So I hope you take the invitation from Jen about just poking out a little bit to crack open that shell. Because if you don't, no one will do it for you, and I know we can't do it without you.
Beautiful. Thank you for those sharings. For this conversation today, I would love it if you can share a little bit on where, if anybody that is listening, if they are resonating with your work, with what you do at Plenty, with your book, where can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
Lovely. Well, our book is called Leading with Light, Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More. And if you'd like to go to the book site, you can find it at leadingwithlightthebook.com. And our company, Plenty Consulting, if you're interested in Lantern, our leadership retreat, or our coaching or consulting work, you can find us at plentyconsulting.com.
Beautiful. So I'll share those links as well for everybody. If you're listening, just go to the show notes so that it's easier for you. Thank you, Jen, Jeff. Thank you so much
you.
for your light, for leading with light as well, for this beautiful time that we spent together. And I'm looking forward to more conversations. That this is, a lot of times what lights me up is having these beautiful connections with people that we are all connected and we are speaking similar languages, similar ideas, but as well not the same. And it's one of the things that I love to be able to share all of this. So thank you so much for taking the time, for being here, and for sharing with all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely. So lovely. Looking forward to more.
Yes, yes, yes. And thank you everyone for listening. As always, I would love to know what resonated with you. What did you hear that was new, perhaps? What's a new potential? What have you been already practicing of the things that we talked about? I would love to know. So anywhere that you're seeing this episode, share with us, leave a comment. And yes, thank you everyone for being here. Thanks, Jen and Chef. And we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.